think that's what the gift that the show has. Even question.
उसको प्रेजेंट कर सारे
आइसक्रीम होती है डबल संडे, जिसमें एक आइसक्रीम में 2 होती है। आज सब में 2 कार्यक्रम है। एक छोटा सा कार्यक्रम है जो शुरू में होगा और फिर उसके बाद हमारा जो नियमित कार्यक्रम है वो होगा। बिहार सरकार ने पिछले वर्ष या संभवतः इसी वर्ष 2 राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार स्थापित किए। राज्यों द्वारा राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार देने की परंपरा अक्सर नहीं रही है। हालांकि मध्य प्रदेश में हमने 1980 में शुरू की थी कालिदास सम्मान से। कुछ इसलिए भी कि राज्यों को भी राष्ट्रीय प्रतिभा को पहचानने का गौरव मिलना चाहिए। बहरहाल बिहार सरकार ने ये अब शुरू किया है और 2 हमारे मूर्धन्यों को, एक को ललित कला में और एक को नृत्य में, ये सम्मान दिया जाना है। आमतौर पे तो ये सम्मान पटना में दिया जाता, पर राजा इस हालत में नहीं है कि वहां जा सकें। बापू जी महाराज तो खैर कहीं भी नाच सकते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी ऐसी तारीखें मिलना कठिन था जिसमें वो कहीं और न नाच रहे हों और पटना में ही आ सके। तो हम लोगों ने ये तय किया कि ये पुरस्कार, क्योंकि हमारा ये आयोजन होता ही है यहाँ भी, तो हमारा बड़ा सौभाग्य है कि श्री सैयद हैदर रजा और श्री विद्युत महाराज यहाँ हैं और उन्हें बिहार सरकार की ओर से सम्मानित करने उनके कला संस्कृति और युवा विभाग के सचिव और संचालक यहाँ आए हैं। मैं बिहार सरकार को बधाई, आजकल सरकारों को बधाई देना खतरे से खाली नहीं, तरह तरह के अर्थ निकाले जाते हैं। हाँ, लेकिन बिहार सरकार को बधाई देने में हर्ज नहीं है, निकाला जा सके जो व्याख्या इसकी की जाए सो करने दीजिए, इससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है। कलाओं के सम्मान का वैसे कोई क्षण या कोई समय नहीं होता, वो जब भी हो तब भी वो शुभ है और जब भी किया जाए वही मुहूर्त है। तो मैं अब विनय कुमार जी से कहता हूं कि वो आगे चलाएं।
सम्मान समारोह हम लोग कर सकें। कला संस्कृति एवं युवा विभाग की ओर से मैं आप सभी का औपचारिक रूप से स्वागत करता हूं। कला संस्कृति एवं युवा विभाग बहुत सारे कार्यक्रम कर रहा है, उसकी सूची मैं नहीं यहाँ गिनवाना चाहता, पर हम लोग बैकवर्ड फॉरवर्ड की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, चाहे वो अधिसंरचनाओं का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का विकास हो या कार्यक्रम की बात हो, वर्कशॉप सेमिनार की बात हो, तो हम लोग सब दिशा में कुछ न कुछ नया करने के लिए सोच रहे हैं। और हम लोग का सौभाग्य है कि अशोक जी का सानिध्य, इनका आशीर्वाद भी हम लोग को मिलता रहा है। बहुत सारे तमाम जो देश के बड़े चिंतक, कवि और कलाकार हैं, उन सबका भी सहयोग हम लोग को मिल रहा है। उसी के क्रम में हम लोगों ने पिछले वर्ष से बिहार कला पुरस्कार शुरू किया था, जिसके क्रम में इस वर्ष 2 राष्ट्रीय स्तर के पुरस्कार हम लोगों ने शुरू किए हैं, एक चाक्षुष कला के लिए और दूसरा प्रदर्शन कला के लिए। और हम लोग बहुत ही आभारी हैं कि जब हमारी जूरी ने यह तय किया तो हमारे रजा साहब और पंडित बिरजू महाराज जी ने इस सम्मान को स्वीकार करने की सहमति प्रदान की, उसे स्वीकारने की सहमति दी। तो हम लोग गौरवान्वित हैं कि हम लोग उनको आज यहाँ सम्मानित करने के लिए उपस्थित हुए हैं। तो इसके लिए औपचारिक रूप से आप सब लोगों को संबोधित करने के लिए मैं अपने विभाग के सचिव श्री चंचल कुमार जी को आमंत्रित करता हूँ कि वो 2 शब्द रखें, उसके बाद फिर पुरस्कार का कार्यक्रम।
आज इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित सम्मानित सैयद हैदर रजा साहब, सम्मानित पंडित बिरजू महाराज जी, आदरणीय अशोक वाजपेयी जी, आज इस सभागार में बैठे हुए और मीडिया सहसार हैं। जैसा कि विनय जी ने बताया, इस वर्ष हम लोगों ने बिहार कला पुरस्कार का मुख्यमंत्री के द्वारा पटना में कार्यक्रम कर लोगों को सम्मानित किया गया, परंतु चूंकि कुछ कारणवश आप नहीं आ सके थे उस कार्यक्रम में, इसलिए सरकार का निर्णय हुआ कि कला संस्कृति एवं युवा विभाग की ओर से ही जाकर दिल्ली में एक कार्यक्रम कर उन्हें सम्मानित किया जाए। जैसा कि बताया गया, कला संस्कृति युवा विभाग द्वारा कला मंच, रंगशालाओं और सांस्कृतिक संरचनाओं के निर्माण के लिए काफी कार्य किए जा रहे हैं। युवा कलाकारों, रंगकर्मियों के लिए अभिनय शिविर, पेंटिंग कार्यशाला और कई कार्यशाला किए जा रहे हैं। इसके अलावा जरूरतमंद कलाकारों को आर्थिक सहायता भी प्रदान की जाती है। सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रमों के आदान प्रदान में अन्य राज्यों में जाकर विभाग द्वारा कार्यक्रम भी किए जाते हैं। कला के क्षेत्र में शोध एवं डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, जैसे पटना कलम, मिथिला चित्रकला, मंजूसा, सिक्की, इन सभी क्षेत्र में शोध भी किए जा रहे हैं और पुस्तकों का प्रकाशन भी किया जा रहा है। महोदय, आज आपको पंडित बिरजू महाराज जी और सैयद हैदर रजा साहब को सम्मानित करते हुए बिहार राज्य भी गौरवान्वित महसूस कर रहा है। आपको सम्मानित करते हुए वस्तुतः हम सम्मानित हो रहे हैं। आशा है कि आपका स्नेह, आशीर्वाद हमें और देश के युवा कलाकारों को हमेशा मिलता रहेगा। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
सबसे पहले रजा साहब का सम्मानित करें।
क्या करना है?
काफी चीजें
ले लीजिए।
ये भी हमें मिला है वैसे।
हो गया भैया, अपनी क्लास लीजिए।
गपशप होनी है। मुझे प्रसन्नता है कि आज हमारे कार्यक्रम में 2 मूर्धन्यों का सम्मान बिहार सरकार ने किया और ये बिहार सरकार की परंपरा आगे की जारी रहेगी। हर वर्ष 2 लोगों का कम से कम कीजिए और कुछ इसको इधर उधर भी बढ़ाइए। तो
आगे पीछे,
क्योंकि हमने जब शुरू किया था तो एक कालिदास सम्मान बारी बारी से थे। फिर एक बार एक मुख्यमंत्री आए तो मैंने उनसे कहा भर्ती ज्यादा बढ़ा के करना चाहते हैं। हमने कहा कि एक सम्मान क्यों देते, हम 5 क्यों नहीं देते? हाँ 5 दीजिए। तो इस तरह से फिर हर वर्ष संगीत, नृत्य, चित्रकला इत्यादि को पुरस्कृत मंच को महाराज जी, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
बैठ के ले ले, बैठ के ले ले। स्टील वाले स्टील ले ले।
तो सामने खड़े होने वाले लोगों में से क्योंकि हम लोगों का तो मुख्य जो रसिक हैं उनके साथ लड़ने की जो दिल मिले, उसके साथ साथ फिर जो कला की आकृतियां बनती हैं कमाल की। प्रथम तो मैं नीतीश जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ। बिहार सरकार तथा वहाँ का प्रेम, और हम लोग बहुत मतलब आप सोचिए यूपी से लेकर मधुबनी तक हम लोग एक कथक परिवार बसा हुआ है। मधुबनी तक, मुजफ्फरपुर, दरभंगा, पटना, तो यूपी से बहुत दूर नहीं रहे हम लोग। और हर दुर्गा पूजा में मैं नाचता रहा बहुत ज्यादा, डॉक्टर शिव नारायण के समय। वो प्रेम अभी भी बना है। और मुझे कोई भी सम्मान मिलता है तो मुझे नहीं मिलता, कला जगत को मिलता है, नृत्य जगत को मिलता है, और हम तमाम लोगों को मिलता है। लेने वाला सिर्फ मैं हूँ, ये 2 हाथ को मिलता है और मिलता सबको है, न जाने किसको किसको मिलता है। जो इस कर्म के हमारे कर्मशील हैं नृत्य के, सबको मिलता है। मैं उसका है पुजारी कह लीजिए, मेरे हाथ के द्वारा मिलता है बस केवल। मुझे बड़ी खुशी हो रही है साहब से मुलाकात मेरी शायद पहली बार हो रही है, और बेहद मुझे इतना मन को आनंद हो रहा है, क्योंकि मुझे ये सब कलाएं जो हैं लक्ष्य कहीं ना कहीं जाकर रंगों के साथ नहीं जाता। एक बार शंभू महाराज ने कहा, जब नई नई लाइट शुरू हुई थी तो किसी ने कहा, महाराज से पूछा लाइट कौन सी दूं, हरी दूं कि लाल दूं डांस में? तो कहने लगे तुझे पूर्ण चुपचाप सफेद लाइट दे, जो शंभू महाराज रंग पैदा करे तब वो दिखाई पड़ेगा। इतना बड़ा विश्वास अपने काम पर कि मेरी जो आंखें कहेंगी वो दिखाई पड़ेगा, क्या लाइट देगा। एक ऐसा भी जमाना था, और आजकल तो पूछिए नहीं, ये लाइट चाहिए, वो मैच चाहिए, ये दुनिया भर के लड़ते हैं बहुत। गलीचों पे, चांदनी पे हम लोग नाचे हुए लोग हैं, पुरानी गांव की गड्ढे वाली जगहों पर नाचे हुए लोग हैं। पाँव पहचानता था कि गड्ढा कहाँ है, पाँव ढूंढ के नाच लेता था कि यही सही है, बाकी सब जगह खतरा है। ये नहीं था कि यार स्टेज का अच्छा नहीं मिला, कहाँ नाचेंगे ना जी। पाँव पहचानता था, उसकी आंखें हो गई थी, यही ठीक है, इतनी सी दूर में अपना गुजारा कर लो। तो मेरे परिवार ने बहुत सेवा की और मैं बड़ा भाग्यवान हूँ कि मेरा जन्म उस खानदान में हुआ, उस घर में हुआ। सबसे बड़ी बात तो यही है। तो उसके बाद मेरा कर्म भी है, इसको मैंने मेहनत किया और मैं अच्छा शागिर्द हूँ। आज भी मैं गुरु नहीं हूँ, आज भी मैं अच्छा शागिर्द हूँ और शागिर्द रहूँगा, क्योंकि गुरु हो गया तो कुछ खोजना बंद हो जाएगा। खोज जब तक जारी रहेगी जब तक हम शागिर्द हैं। ये कहते हुए बहुत बहुत रसिकों का भी मैं बड़ा कदरदान हूँ। आप सब लोग बैठे हैं यहाँ, इतने प्यार से बैठे हैं, हम सब लोगों का सम्मान देख रहे हैं। आप सबका भी स्वागत और मेरा शुभकामनाएं आप सबके साथ हैं, क्योंकि आप ही तो समझाएंगे अगली पीढ़ियों को कि हमारे यहाँ की कला क्या है। ये कहते हुए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। अशोक जी तो हमारे बिल्कुल दिल के करीब लोग हैं और इनके साथ जब मेरी बातचीत शुरू होती तो उसका अंत नहीं होता, चलती रहती है। लिहाजा 3 घंटे तक इन्होंने हमारे साथ बात की इंदौर में शायद तरीका से, केवल बात, कोई घुंघरू नहीं, कोई तबला नहीं, मुख वाणी से ही जो तबले बजते रहे। जो इन्होंने कुछ कहा, मैंने कहा केवल किसकी बात की। 3 घंटे लोग बैठे हैं, बड़े प्यार से सुना, बड़े बड़ा ताज्जुब हुआ कि क्या केवल बात सुन सकते हैं लोग। पर अच्छी बातें हों, गहरी बातें हों और सुंदर बातें हों तो उसको तो सभी लोग एंजॉय करते हैं। लिहाजा आगे भी भविष्य में हम दोनों मिलेंगे, फिर चर्चा करेंगे। और ये कहते हुए आप सबका स्वागत है, बहुत बहुत शुभकामना और उनकी से दोबारा धन्यवाद देते हुए। पर अवार्ड, ये सम्मान अगर ठीक समय पर सरकार, कोई सी भी सरकार की बात कर रहा हूँ, अगर उचित समय पर जब महत्व पे एकदम चरम सीमा पर कलाकार है, पेंटर हो, डांसर हो, गायक हो, म्यूजिक अगर नहीं देता है इस वक्त तक तो बड़ी गलत बात है कि बस इंतजार करते रहे तो वो कब मरेगा तब कब हम देंगे। ये बड़ा मुश्किल है। तो वो तारीखें गिनते हैं कि ये मरने वाला कब तब दे देंगे, वो सबसे बड़ा गलती है। तो मेरे ख्याल से ये मेरे संदेश सबको मालूम हो तो अच्छा होगा। ये कहते हैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। अब सब आए, रज़ा साहब को बार बार मुबारकबादी, क्योंकि इन्होंने क्या क्या चित्र क्या क्या किया है। मैं तारीफ सुनता रहा लेकिन आज उनके दर्शन में कर सका हूँ और हमारे बुजुर्ग हमसे बड़े हैं, उनको प्रणाम करते हुए
इस अवसर पर उपस्थित श्रद्धेय श्री सैयद हैदर रजा साहब, श्रद्धेय पंडित बिरजू महाराज जी, आदरणीय श्री अशोक वाजपेयी जी, उपस्थित सभी हमारे अतिथिगण, धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करना ऐसे तो काफी कठिन है, परंतु मैं केवल इतना कहना चाहूंगा कि जिस प्रकार से तेज धूप में एक बहुत बड़े वृक्ष के नीचे आके एक शीतलता का अनुभव होता है, उसी प्रकार अपने बुजुर्गों को सानिध्य पाकर, और इस प्रकार के समय में जब हमारे पे समय ही नहीं रह गया, नई जनरेशन टीवी कंप्यूटर उसमें बिजी है और कला सीखने के लिए समय ही नहीं है, कला की परिभाषा बदल चुकी है। ऐसे समय में आपका सानिध्य पाकर आपने जो राष्ट्रीय सम्मान स्वीकार किया है उसके लिए निश्चित रूप से हम आपके आभारी हैं, धन्यवाद ज्ञापन करते हैं। मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा सभी अतिथियों को जिन्होंने अपना समय निकाला और इस अवसर पर उपस्थित हुए। मेरी उम्मीद है कि इसी प्रकार से आने वाले समय में हम एक साथ मिलकर बिहार के अंदर भी कला के विभिन्न क्षेत्रों में नया आयाम स्थापित करेंगे। नई जनरेशन को हम अपना आपके माध्यम से आपका आशीर्वाद मिलता रहेगा। धन्यवाद। थैंक यू।
नीलम, मानसिंह चौधरी, अरुणा, वासुदेव, सुरेश, गोयल,
nation to our 12th installment of a series called Art Matters. Another foundation is still somewhat backwardly believes that art matters in our times, in our society, where all kinds of other things seem to matter rather than arts. We have been trying to discuss from various angles issues relating to arts. And when I say arts, it does not mean merely visual arts, but also performing arts, literature, language, ideas, etc. And the topic we have chosen today is we and they. one of the central problems in all centuries seem to have been, what do we do with others? Whoever those others are. They could be your religious others, your cultural others, your ideological others, your national others, your international others, etc., etc. And I'm reminded, and I like to quote, when the Peruvian novelist got the Nobel 3 years ago, in the Nobel lecture, he mentioned the following: good literature creates bridges between different peoples, and by having us enjoy, suffer, or feel surprise, unites as beneath languages, beliefs, habits, customs, and prejudices that separate us. Literature creates a fraternity within human diversity and eclipses the frontiers created among men and women by ignorance, ideologies, religions, languages, and this is the most important word, stupidity. So here we have a panelist, a very illustrious panelist, drawn from 4 different fields. We have Professor V.N. Goswami, who is one of the best known art historians of this country, and perhaps one of the best art historians in the world today. And he has been working for a number of years in the field of visual arts and creating, bringing to our notice what we, in the colonial times and after the post-colonial hangover, had failed to notice. So we have Professor V.N. Goswami. We have NEELAM MANSINGH Chaudhary, who is an old friend. We worked together at one time in Bharat Bhavan, and now she is in Chandigarh and she runs a theatre group, and she has been one of the persons who has also been visiting London and other theatrical capitals and doing theatre there. So she has the experience of both sides, as it were. Thirdly, we have ARUNA VASUDEV. She is one of those 4 or 5 or 6 women in Delhi who have done amazing work. I need not mention the other 5 and keep you guessing. So that, and she has been working in the field of cinema for a long while and bringing us closer to the other cinema that very seldom comes to our notice. And lastly, we have a fellow civil servant, a diplomat, SURESH, the Director General of the ICCR.
Not for too long.
Not for too long, but he has been paid towards the end of his life, towards the end of his professional life at least, for promoting international cultural relations of India. So he knows the more practical, perhaps the more difficult side of this. So there you are, we and they. And the rules of the game are simple. Each of the panelists will speak for about 15 minutes or thereabout. And then we have, maybe if they would like to discuss with each other, they are free to do that for a while, and leave some time for us to then open it to the House for comments, etc. Now those who are fond of commenting, in any case, must also know the art of breviary. We do not allow, presentations again given by the audience, because there is enough presentations. You can ask brief questions, offer brief comment, etc., etc. So there you are, we and they, and let us hear from them who are us and who are they. I don't think we can harp too much upon similarities. We should also acknowledge that there are differences, and there are serious differences between us and them. Now those also play a creative role in the dynamics of our arts. So we will start with Professor P. N. Goswami. Sir.
My host, how long should I speak? And the answer was, you can speak as long as you like. We switch off the mics after 15 minutes. So I shall try and confine myself to just about 14 and a half minutes. Essentially, I'm going to take you back some 400 years, when we had a major encounter in the area of painting between Indian painting and European painting. We are all here to discuss we and they, what are we like, what are they like, and what happens when the two come together. That's what my understanding is. In the time of Akbar, in the second half of the 16th century, Europeans started coming to India. They had been here before, but they came and settled. Some Portuguese, a number of them. And the emperor was so generous, so broad-minded that he allowed them to build a church in Agra and so on. And there are a number of people, Jesuit fathers, who were here in the hope of converting not only a couple of people, but the emperor himself. So because they thought any day the news will go out that the emperor has converted to Christianity, and the whole of India will convert to Christianity too. That didn't happen. But in any case, at that church, they showed a great many works of theirs, European works, some icons and some other painted things and so on. Also, along with the Portuguese, came to India at that particular time a large number of prints, engravings and so on. And these the emperor responded to in the sense. He took his sons into the church, we all know that, it's documented, and they all looked at that with great eyes of wonder and so on. What is this kind of thing? And he encouraged his painters to try and see if they can do something like that, or whatever, respond to that. And then begins a very, very interesting phase in which a number of great painters, and I'll concentrate only upon three. Abul Hassan, one of the greatest painters India has ever produced, got the name of, he was called the Nadir Zaman, the rarity of the age. Then the second painter was a Hindu painter at the court called Keshav Das. And the third was a Hindu painter again, maybe Hindu, we don't know for sure, man called Basavan. Gifted painter, extraordinarily gifted. And how these people responded to what they were seeing and what they produced and so on is the issue that I would like to take up very briefly. But let me just add one small thing here. There's no problem at all for Indian painters to imitate, to copy. And I'll, for your information or delight, I'll narrate to you a very, very brief episode. At the court of the Emperor Jahangir came the Sir Thomas Roe, the ambassador of St. James, and they were meeting from time to time. And Sir Thomas Roe has left a memoir, and in that there's a very long reference to an occasion on which he presented to the Emperor Jahangir, who was a great connoisseur of painting, we all know that. And he presented to him a painting. And the Emperor said, I like to show it to my wives or whatever it is, can you collect it in a few days' time or whatever. They agreed upon a time and or a date. And Thomas Roe writes himself in his own words that on that particular evening I was summoned and the Emperor, I wanted to claim my own painting back, and the Emperor produced 5 versions of it and said, pick yours. And the ambassador, he says, I mean, the light was not very good. So when it says, I had some difficulty in doing that, but finally I picked the right one and so on and so forth. But I was quite amazed at how within a few days these 4 painters had produced different versions of exactly the same painting. So copying was not a problem at all. The question was, what do you do? How do you handle these things? Are you learning something from it? Is it only a curiosity? Are you taking some elements from it, I mean, according to your own want or according to your own skills or your wishes and so on, and incorporating them in your own stuff? Because the European paintings presented a very, very different point of vision. The point of view, the perspective and so on and so forth, all kinds of things, which the Indians were not at all used to. We had in India had been exposed for centuries together to things coming from outside. But this was a very different cup of tea. So, how do they respond? I'll very quickly take you through a series of slides, very, very quickly indeed. And you can come back to them if time allows, and if there are any questions about it. I'll just take you through this particular series. This is Nadir-ul-Zaman, Abul Hassan, at a very, very tender age. He's a left-handed painter, as you can see. And this is a tiny little painting on the border of a page of the Muraqqa Gulshan, which is in Tehran now. And it is a portrait of Nadir-ul-Zaman painted by a painter called Dawlat. If you can read Persian, then on that particular page, you can see Amale Dawlat, Shabih Nadir-ul-Zaman, Shabih Abul Hassan. This is what Abul Hassan painted, Neptune. At the age probably of 15 years, this painting must have arrived. He must have decided to copy it. There is this great apparition from the seas and so on, Lord of the Seas and so on. And in the bottom, at the bottom right, you say Amale Abul Hassan bin Akha Riza, son of Akha Riza, and then he says Murida, and then Shah Salim is written right at the top, and the year is 1011 Hijri, which works out to 1601 or something like that. Now, if you show it to a European, I mean, he might have difficulty, like Sir Thomas Rowe had, and whether it was a European painting or an Indian, he has copied it exactly. An engraving by Durer, St. John the Baptist, arrives, and he's struck by it. Whether he was asked by his patron or not, we do not know, but this is what he draws. An exquisite, absolutely exquisite drawing, Abul Hassan. And there is, at the bottom of that, there is an inscription. At the bottom of that, there is an inscription. I'm sorry, I'm taking you. Mashaq, that is, it is an exercise by Abul Hassan Ibn Raza, Murid, then we say something Shah Salim, Dar Sinne Sizada, at the age of 13, he had made that particular drawing. Now the man was obviously a genius of extraordinary abilities. He's copying. But this is what his style is. This is what his own style is. The enthronement of Jahangir on India, and there is this enormous crowd of some 200 people and so on, people from all parts of the world and so on gathered together, and there is this extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary range, not only of people but of stances and gestures and complexions and so on and so forth. This is what he was. What am I doing? Yeah. This is a detail from the same particular painting. This man on a Naubat entering the gateway, all kinds of celebrations, and on the walls, as you can see, there are even tiny little things, not bigger than a nail on your finger or something like this. Abul Hassan again. We all know this particular painting. Now he must have seen some kind of a cartography sort of thing and so on, but Jahangir, Abul Hassan, in a sense, transcended the reign of Akbar to Jahangir, and he's embracing Shah Abbas of Iran. And then, of course, there are the European things in the background, as you can see, the great big halo, or nimbus as we call it. And at the bottom of that on either side is a combination of the sun and the moon, which are eternity, so to speak. There are these little cherubs, as you can see, and so on and so forth. And they are standing on the globe, right? And standing not only on the globe, but It is a political statement who had never met. Jahangir and Shah Abbas had never met in their lives. It's just imaginary, right? But at the bottom, Jahangir is standing appropriately on a lion and Shah Abbas on a lamb or something like this. So you have to read meanings into this. Right? So these are all things, these allegorical pictures which had arrived in India were quite extraordinary, quite extraordinary. And Abul Hasan is doing his own thing. Keshav Das. Keshav Das has got hold of a European painting. And this is how these are engravings which have actually been pasted on top, and there is the bottom towards the right. There is a completely, totally European work. You can see the interest in texture and volume and so on and so forth. Entirely unlike what Indian painters were used to doing at that particular time. Now, Keshav Das was one of the most gifted painters of that particular. This is an engraving which arrives, and this is a sort of a kind of mystic somewhere, and this is what he paints. You can see that he has learnt a great deal from that, or at least adjusted his own style. In the far distance, the view through the haze of atmosphere and so on, very European of that particular time and so on, is a city, and this is the man, and you can now see Keshav Das doing this muscular sort of a kind of a figure, the volume and the texture, etc., of the dress that this particular man is wearing, the book he's holding in his hands. But this is how Keshav Das used to paint. Keshav Das paints himself. It's a self-portrait. The emperor stands on top, and he has somebody whom he is dictating something. Down below, Keshav Das, as an old age, after he had done all those European things and so on and so forth, is holding a humble petition in his hand, addressed to the Emperor Akbar for increase in emoluments, and an underling, somebody here standing with a stick in his hand, shooing him off. Jao, jao, yahan pe koi kaam nahi. Now, if you go back to the painting, notice the cliffs, notice the rocks in the background, at the top and in the middle. Completely Persian, entirely Persian in origin and message. So, whatever he had painted as in terms of European copies and so on, he has effaced them, just erased them from his mind, and goes back into the womb of his own particular style, so to speak. Basavan, again one of the greatest painters at the Akbari court. A drawing has arrived, he makes a copy of it. European figure quite clearly, entirely clearly. And there is the Madonna nursing the child Jesus at her breast, one of the most famous paintings from Mughal India. And there's a long inscription and so on, which I'll not go into at this particular time. But I'll take you through some details. This is Basavan making a copy, obviously, of a European painting, but incorporating in it other elements which he's at home with. This is the Madonna, of course. And then he introduces this great big sort of arch at the back, and this curtain which is sort of tied up so that you can reveal what is behind. And he introduces an Indian tree in the midst of it and so on. Playing around. He's taken elements from here, there and everywhere and so on, and so on. And of course, Basavan, the Madonna in this particular case becomes a sun worshipper, so to speak. But the treatment of the Virgin, entirely European. Look at the costume, the dress, not only the dress, but the volume, the weight and so on, the texture, and then of course the Baroque sun coming in from the top left and so on, all these things. Basavan, but this is his own style. This is the Amale Basavan, you can read at the bottom left. This is what Basavan used to paint and continued to paint. So European works which arrive at that particular time, in a manner of speaking, I don't think they're entertainments. They provide an occasion to learn something, internalize something, reject what does not agree with you, make an intelligent choice. Absolutely, totally intelligent, informed choice. This is what I can do, but I will not do it because this is not what I want to do. Whether it is the patron who was responsible for them doing this, or was it their own curiosity, we cannot be sure of. But this is what Vasavan is doing. Alexander the Great, meeting Plato. Neither Plato nor Alexander looked, anything like what your perception in mind might be. It all comes from Iranian art, from Persia. But this is what Vasavan's own work is or was. So the two things, in a certain sense, can coexist, can merge into each other. You can erase some things, you can adopt them, adapt them into your own style. So these are the choices which the painters eventually make. And they make highly intelligent choices. They do not give up the road that they have adopted from their own families and so on, or from their own tradition, but they keep on absorbing some elements, some little elements here, there, and so on. This is neither Abul Hasan, nor Keshav Das, nor Vasavan. A drawing, an engraving comes, it's a European engraving quite obviously, and some artist decides to show how a lazy person, a person who is kind of in a more or less a kind of coma, and how it is to be contrasted with women, as a woman working very hard and digging and so on and so forth. It's called Dolores, right, in Italian. This is what the figure at the extreme right is. Just absorb the elements in it. This man old, quite obviously, and has given up, so to speak, as far as life is concerned. And sitting in his chair. Farrukh Beg, another painter, makes a version of it. And how he changes. How he changes this thing. Farrukh Beg has not seen a colored picture. He does it entirely on his own and colors it, brings in this strange surrealistic kind of a tree towards the top and so on. The man is so inert, so to speak, that he can't even move away that cat which is at the extreme right, who's licking milk from something like this. And there are all kinds of things which he keeps on adding. So but what I would like you to concentrate upon is here there is behind this man, there's a little book lying on a table on which there are two spectacles. Were these painters looking through two spectacles? I think they were. Not literally, but otherwise. Two ways of seeing things. One from close, one from far. I like to remind you that this is about the time, because Florence was one of the great sort of centers of European art at that particular time. Florence was also the place where spectacles were produced in very, very large numbers and being imported into India. So wearing a glass, an eyeglass, is something which these painters were being asked to do. To look at things carefully, take them off, do their own things. This is and this is the last of my slides. It has nothing to do with Mughal art, as a Rajasthani drawing. A painter, an artist, is trying ideas out. He's not a goddess with 8 arms. He's drawing, he's making up his mind, shall I put the arms here or there, raise them, lower them, and so on. These are decisions which he will eventually make when he finishes the painting. But this is a celebration going on inside his own head. He's making up his mind, doing this and that. This is a predicament. This is an encounter. But I would simply end up by saying, and we can come back to that whenever, if time allows and so on, to any of these things. I'll just rush you through them, and I've rushed through these drawings myself and so on. But these encounters, whether the painters remain themselves, or become other people, there's we and they, us and them, self and the other and so on issues that we'll have to grapple with. All generations have done that. This is what happened 400 years.
So I will speak from the premise of being a practitioner rather than an academic thinker. Theatre, it invites us to enter the spaces between the unspoken and unspeakable. All we have to do is lift our minds and hearts and make it happen. Theatre helps us to reimagine reality, not just as an idea, but as an experience that we can touch, taste, and feel. A space where people come together and work out multiple truths, blazing and tender contradictions. Where the encounter between the performer and the audience is real but not frightening, and life is offered as a metaphor. The we and the they is always visible in a performance space, especially when we talk about a conventional performance space. The actors on the stage and the audience in the auditorium. If the performance is good, there is a moment when the audience ceases to be 100 separated individuals and become a single entity. This fusion happens either through laughter or sometimes in silence, but eventually in applause if the play is moving in the right direction. And the pleasure of the audience is in fact at a certain moment finding yourself as part of a whole. Everyone knows that, everyone who is part of theatre knows that what you see and experience in a rehearsal is nothing compared with what happens when the same work, maybe a couple of hours later, is suddenly seen by hundreds of people. The moment these 100 people are there, a physical process, something chemical, almost magnetic, comes into operation, and there is a flow of energy. This energy starts with the play by the actor treading upon a passive ground, which is the audience. The moment the actor walks on the passive ground, he excites it. He awakens something in it. What the actor awakens is the audience and their capacity to connect and take the narrative forward. The energy produced flows back in different ways towards the stage. On a pragmatic level, this energy will first encourage the actor. The more it inspires the actor, the more he gives back to the audience. On a higher level, this energy allows us to sustain illusions. To strike a personal note, having done a series of Western plays in the Punjabi language, I would like to say that when I translate a text, I choose a text according to the issues that concern me. No matter which part of the world the text belongs to, my actor and myself take a journey to make the story our own. Translation is not taking a text and referring to a dictionary and changing it in another language. Translation is an active practice, an alchemy of becoming. Text travels, theatre travels. It's about translation and becoming. How tradition transforms itself and how culture is about movement. This movement of culture is something we have known since the Silk Route. During colonization, when identity had to be defined against the other. And post-independence, when identity had to be defined as essential. Culture was used interchangeable with status. And this had a large impact on how we worked and created. In the course of my theatrical practice, translating foreign text into regional languages, in my case in Punjabi, did not in any way suggest to me that we came from a tradition of literary inadequacy. What translation brought to us was a narrative of an alien culture, but delivered like a Trojan horse into our minds through a familiar language. As a result, the familiarity of the language evoked a familiar cultural horizon for an audience, a safe space and time space, so that they could enter and enjoy the comfortable act of theatre and entertainment. However, this familiarity, much like the Trojan horse, carries within it unfamiliar emotional sensations that are both familiar and at the same time disorienting. The translated text then created a sense of familiarity, but also active participation of the audience, as everything is slightly unfamiliar. One day, I saw rural actors performing in a village square, singing, dancing, ad-libbing, telling stories. A mixture of pop art and natural fun was their chosen vocabulary. On a stage made of wooden planks, an actor entered the stage, blew on something that looked suspiciously like a car hooter. A procession of actors followed, and after a verbal, witty duel, a group of garishly dressed female impersonators entered the space, making the villagers sit up, alert with anticipation. The stories they enacted were pan-Indian myths, conjoining local myths, transformed and renewed for local meaning. The gods that they evoked rode bicycles, aspired for a Maruti 800, and also sweated profusely. In the middle of a tragedy, a horse appeared on the stage and broke into a song. In an episode of the famous love legend Sohini Mehwal, the matka on which, or the earthen pot on which Sohini is traveling across the river Chenab, suddenly animates itself and starts to narrate the story to the audience. This experience for me was transformative. Seeing a performance that traversed music, dance and singing in one confident art was a revelation, in total contrast to the text-based scripts that I had been exposed to. Seeing the performance was to feel myself face to face with some sort of alien life form, which was at the same time profoundly and frighteningly familiar. By this, I'm not suggesting a universalism of experience, regardless of cultural location, but a universality of differences. An awareness that differences resonate strongly, in fact, sometimes more strongly than the sameness. Born and brought up in a semi-urban world, I wanted to participate in a specific experience that was part of my region, but to which I did not have any concrete or direct access. But when I saw this performance and tried to create my own relationship with it, I realized that theatre, whether traditional or modern, classical or folk, is made by people, executed by people, by the only available instrument, human beings. I also felt drawn to this form, as if some ancient memory was knocking inside me. Was it possible for me to have a natural process of exchange and influence between them and myself? The nagging question of we and they reared its head again. Through my toolbox of Stanislavski's The Magic If, I felt that through theatre I could lead multiple lives, becoming many people. To quote Peter Brook, in everyday life, if is a fiction. In the theatre, if is an experiment. In everyday life, if is an evasion. In the theatre, if is the truth. When we are persuaded to believe in this truth, then the theatre and the life are one. Many years have passed since that incident, and today my group is a mix of rural performers and urban actors. By putting such a company together, I have a somewhat precarious, somewhat unstable meeting of folk, tradition, and the modern, as between setting up an equation between female impersonators and the actresses in my company. It was a revelation for me when I understood that theatre can be a place of play. At the same time, it can also be a space for exploring frightening reality. Alienation for me became a perfect word. The only thing that should matter is surprise, or to find oneself outside yourself. My company, which is the name of my theatre group, could present a slightly disconcerting profile when viewed from the outside. Rural actors ranging from age 20 to 90, urban actors trained in drama schools, female impersonators could present a motley sight. When I look at the female impersonator, already a disorienting figure, a man pretending to be a woman, but not a homosexual, a jester who speaks truths, a rural relic of medieval and pre-modern times, working a post-liberalized urban Indian actor. My notion of the marginal were transformed. The marginal became the central driver. This is the shadow, no longer the marginal, but the medium of transformation. While all this is clear in retrospect, it is worth seeing through this journey that we've had together for the last almost 28 years, littered with debris and anecdotes, how the relationship between us grew and how we founded our own modernistic interaction, in between cultures, but always returning home to our villages or our towns after creating and working together. Thank you.
ARUNA VASUDEV.
Day, and all my life has been a struggle to bring the day and the week together. At first, Europe, because when I was when I wanted to work in cinema, it was France was the home of cinema, and I thought that's where I have to go. Now, France was a totally unknown entity in India, and everything here was either at that time still England, and then America was beginning to take its place. That was the only cultures we knew because of language. And when I said I want to go to France, my parents were absolutely horrified. France, what will you do there? I said, well, if I want to work in cinema, that's where it is, and that's where I'm going. And I just went, and fortunately I had parents who were very open about everything. They said, well, that's what you want to do, go ahead. So my first experience outside India really was France. And it was completely different, as Raza Saab will also tell you, because I think I must have gone about the same time as you did to France, and there were no Indians there was no Indian restaurant, there was just nothing. There was the embassy, and there were about maybe 2.5 other Indians there, and that was all. But it was an incredible experience of learning to be with the other, and becoming very quickly adapted to it. You're retaining your own identity, and yet accepting a whole new world and being excited by the discovery of another. And I think that's what's driven me all my life, is trying to make you understand. I was at a film festival to see a Hungarian film. This was early years when I was still learning cinema. And I thought, I don't want to see what is this Hungary? Some little country I know nothing about, I'm not interested. But I was persuaded to go, and then I was fascinated. And over the years, when I saw more and more Hungarian films, to me, the Hungarians came alive. I got so interested in how they lived, how they ate, what were their family relationships, what were their relationships at work, what were their dreams, what were their aspirations, what was their quality of life. And I realized that really I never went to Hungary despite that. Many, many years later, yes. But it is such an exciting way to discover worlds. You will never in your life, nobody here, none of us ever will be able to go everywhere, see everything, experience everything. It is physically not possible. But when you see it in the cinema, you can literally experience this because you can feel what they're feeling when the film is well made. You get so involved with what is their situation, and you identify with it until that stranger is no longer a stranger. It becomes she becomes a friend, somebody you can relate to, somebody you want to know better, somebody you want to be with. And that is the extraordinary power of cinema. Now in India, this year, everyone's got very excited. What's wrong with my throat? This year, everyone's been very excitedly celebrating 100 years of cinema, of Indian cinema. Well, all right. 1913, the first Indian film was shown. Dadasaheb Phalke made it in 1912, but in fact, Indians started making films the minute they saw a film. And in 1896, 22nd December, the first film was shown in France by the Lumiere brothers. 6 months later, in July 1897, the Lumiere brothers sent their operators across the world and to India, and the first film was shown at Watson's Hotel in Churchgate, not Churchgate. Anyway, for the fort area. Anyway, and it was British only. Indians were not allowed. The audience was only British. And when they saw this film, one of the films, the short film, they were only 1 minute films, was the train entering a station. So you see this in silent film, no sound. The train comes roaring at you, and the audience got so scared they got up and ran away. They how is it going to hit us? 2 months later, the films were shown at a hotel, at a cinema for Indians. The Indians saw this and they started applauding at the end. Then they got up and went behind the screen to see where are the puppeteers, who are the people making this happen, because they've been used to shadow plays. And so for them, the cinema was just a mechanical way of showing what they've been seeing all their lives. So it didn't affect them at all. And I think this is a very interesting example of how differently we perceive things according to our own cultures, our own experiences. And then when very soon films of all kinds began to be imported into India, but the Indians, fascinated by this, went off to England, bought cameras, came back, shot their little scenes. The very first film, a short film of the Lumiere brothers' kind, was called The Return of Wrangler Paranjpe. It was Wrangler Paranjpe coming back to India from England, and in 1901 they shot this little newsreel about it. And so on, small things were getting made until Dadasaheb Phalke made Raja Harishchandra in 1912. Now, up to this time, Indian audiences had been shown films from the West, mainly from England, a little bit mainly from France, and a few other. Germany was making films, England had started, so some of those were being shown. So the Indian audiences were only exposed to the Western kind of films. And yet I find very interesting that when the first so-called feature film was made in India by Dadasaheb Phalke, he made it on Raja Harishchandra, on a mythological, because that is what the Indian audience, he felt, would relate to. And also for a very important reason, at that time the films had what they called intertitles, because there was no sound, so to explain what was happening, they had these titles. But now Indian audiences, most of them were illiterate. The elite anyway looked down on cinema as vulgar entertainment for the masses, didn't go there. So who was going to read subtitles? So he took stories that he knew all Indians would understand. And the mythological was born. And by the time sound came, 1931, the first sound film was made in India. And up to then, Indian audiences had been seeing a lot of European films, but they did not relate to them. It was alien. They didn't know. They didn't want to know. They didn't care, but they were fascinated by these moving images. So, but when the first film was made, it was made with 6 songs, 10 dances, because immediately the Indian audiences just went gaga over that. Because this was ours. This is our culture. This is the way we live, and this is how every ceremony in India has a song and a dance to it. So all the films began to adopt that, or adopted those items also. So every film, and still today, has songs and dances because that's an integral part of our nature. And it was so different from what was happening in the West. Now, as far as the East was concerned, we knew nothing and cared nothing. Everything was coming from the West, and we either adopted it with great enthusiasm or we rejected it with total disdain. It was rejected with a certain disdain, with the big audiences, but the urban audiences, the elite, looked at cinema in a very different way, because that time the thinking and the orientation and was made, or forced to be very Western. So to some extent it worked. But I'm not going to go into the history of Indian cinema, but it's just to say that how we looked at what they had to offer, we did not like it, and we made our own. But at a certain level of elite, if you like, the educated people in India, who had been inculcated with Western values, had grown up with Western values, took to those films with great enthusiasm, and then we started to make our own. But, I'm just come back to this whole question of what cinema can do. And I think I have to quote here. See, if you don't know the culture of a country, if you don't know the background, you don't know how they look, how they live, how they are, what they want to look like, how they want to be, it is very difficult to really understand the film until you then persist and make an effort. Once you make an effort, it's the most rewarding experience. And it's only really through cinema that the unfamiliarity turns the stranger into a friend. And the power of cinema was recognized very early by Hollywood. So post-war in the world, I believe that many trade agreements that America made with other countries carried a clause that an X number of Hollywood films will be taken by that country. And why do you think the world has gone the American way with jeans and hamburgers, and the American way of thinking has been with a concerted effort made by the Americans to familiarize the world with their values, their way of being, because very cleverly they realized it opened up huge markets for them. And across the world, that's exactly what happened. And when the Soviet Empire collapsed, I was told by a filmmaker friend from a Central European country, he said immediately after we became independent and we had no money, the Americans came in and bought up every cinema theater in the country. So that our cinema died, because even if we managed to make a film, we couldn't get it into the theater. So now also you see young people all over the world. What is it they're looking at? They're looking at American films, not at their own so much. But anyway, there are just too many stories to tell about cinema. But I just really want to say that power of cinema, certain people and certain countries recognize to great advantage. to get to know the other, and very importantly, as far as economic is concerned, it opens up markets for you, for your goods, your tourists. Many things become possible because the cinema has made you familiar with that country and you want to go and see it. And I want to quote my favorite quote. Kemal Atatürk, how long ago he said this? That was really soon after, it was not, it must have been just after the birth of the sound film. He wrote, "Cinema is so important a discovery that one day it will change the face of the world civilization far more than the discovery of gunpowder, electricity, and continents. Cinema will create possibilities for all men on this earth of knowing one another. Cinema will eliminate divergences of views among men and prove invaluable in realizing the human idea. And we must accord cinema the importance it deserves." Now, unfortunately here in our country, we never recognize the power of cinema, and so we never use it. But that's another story. But when you begin to see, and this is why I changed at a certain point in my life, I discovered Asia, and to me that was the most important discovery of my life, because I knew nothing of Asia, not like all of us, very little. I'm talking of 30 years ago, 35 years ago. And when I discovered Asian cinema, I wanted to know those countries. I wanted to know these cultures. And I found it so fascinating that there was so much we shared, so much we could benefit from. And that subtle differences that existed was so exciting. And I thought, if I'm excited by this, I've got to open this world to other people. I've got to do it. And it was a crazy journey I embarked upon, but I have absolutely no regrets, except that once when I did say to ambassador, please Suresh, I hope you're listening. He was at that time an ambassador, not Suresh, of course. I won't say who it was, but the ambassadors are the ones who connect us with other countries where they serve. And I said to him, why aren't you looking more at Asia? I've been traveling through so many countries, and people say to me, we look to India for leadership, but they're not interested in us. So I said, why isn't India looking at Indonesia, at Philippines, at Thailand, at so many countries which we knew nothing of? And he said to me very disdainfully, "Oh, Aruna, how much batik can we buy from Indonesia?" And this made me so livid. I said, I've got to show this. So I started to bring in the films. And I said, you've got to see these films, and through them you've got to discover these countries, because there is something so valuable for us to discover them and open up whole worlds for a huge number of things that can happen in the field of the arts, in the field of commerce, and so on. That then, when we started to show films from Asia, people said, who's going to see Asian films? Then they started coming, and they came, and it grew, and until they began to recognize the actors. I said, why should you only know Meryl Streep? Why shouldn't you know Kang Soo-yeon, who's a great actress? And slowly it was beginning to happen. And what it meant then, people started to travel east. I'm not saying that they did it because I showed them Asian films, but the world changed, and this was part of the change we were experiencing. And things began to happen. People began to come together in a way that was really, really fascinating, and which is what is happening now. But 30 years ago, nobody did look at Asia. And then I feel, when the cinema can do this for you, I was once watching an Indian film with a Filipino filmmaker friend, and we were watching an Indian film at a festival, and she got very excited after. She said, but Aruna, if this film could be dubbed in Tagalog, it would be a Filipino film, because there was so much that we shared in common. Now you see a Western film you won't feel that because we don't know enough about how they are. Now, when I look at a French film, I know what they're like. But if I look at a Finnish film, no, I won't have the same reaction because I know the country, and but I can learn to discover and understand Finland if I see more of their films, and that might get me more excited in going there, and then things start to happen when people come together. I can go on for ages, but I can see Ashok saying buzz. So with that, I'll thank you.
Closer. I wish somebody else could say that to me. Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'm looking forward to the day when I can enjoy my freedom and liberty. But the fact that I'm not going to be there for far too many days has already inspired me to say things the way I would want to say them rather than as a public servant. Therefore, please do forgive me in case you don't really hear the view of a public servant. But as somebody who has spent more than 30 years in the government, who has seen both sides of the world, and who has often wondered, what does we and they actually mean? Let me begin with a few anecdotes, really, anecdotal references. I think most of you know that we are soon going to be doing what the Europeans call, or what the Belgians call, a major festival, Indian festival, pan-European, and what we think that we were actually lured into thinking it's a major festival, but it's not really that big. But nonetheless, it's a festival which is being given a very high profile in Europe, particularly the Belgians. And more than a year ago, when we were discussing of more a civilizational impact or a civilizational level interaction, without realizing that civilization is a word which probably means very little for Europe really. But we went from we went on the civilization and we said, all right, we'll call it India Eternal or Eternal India. In the sense that eternal India is the one which started more than 5 or 7 million years ago and has absorbed along the way till modernity all kinds of influences ranging from Jewish to Islam to all kinds of things really, tribals and everything. And finally, we are where we are, a country which cannot be described as one or the other, but probably which really is truly representative of all kinds of influences. There was a deafening silence on the other end, sudden discomfort, and they said, we would much rather like to describe it as encounters. I said, I'm sorry, encounters. I don't think that India and Europe ever had any fights or any confrontation, because in my mind, the encounters had that abrasive overtone of having come into conflict with each other. For me, encounters is not really getting together. For me, encounters was actually the word which underlined a friction. And they said, we will call it encounter between India and Europe and encounter within India. Anyway, we went along with it, but the anecdote clearly tells how we perceive things at different levels depending on the cultural background we come from, depending upon the kind of civilization to which we belong or to which we do not belong. Again, another example. Washington, I think all of you have heard of Maximum India. Some of you were there. Now, Maximum India, I must give all credit to Alicia Adams. She really pulled all stops to show India as perhaps not what we would like to see it as, but what the Western countries would like to see it as. And in the minds of the Western countries, there is a great deal of romance for India, which they have developed through not the knowledge of first in India, but through the Bollywood India. They see people dancing around the trees and they think this is the romance. Therefore, Bollywood is of course very popular, but Indian civilization is known through the prism of Bollywood there. And therefore, what do we see? There were some very high value exhibitions there. Jatin is not here, but Jatin will support me, I'm sure.
The day I reached Washington, I found Jatin smoking away as only he can outside the Ritz-Carlton and fuming. He was clutching at his beard and he said, "Can you imagine what they have done to my exhibition of pankhas?" I said, "Sorry, what have they done?" They said, "Somebody thought that pankhas actually means pakshis, the birds, and therefore, unless they are put in a cage, they will fly away. So they have put the pankhas in a cage." Now that is we and they. For us, the freedom of the bird, even if it is, there is a bit of a confusion between what pankha and pakshi is, but the freedom is the most cherished thing. For them, containment, for them to see things remain where they are, so that they don't go away from us, was more important. That was a value judgment. Again, another example of Maximum India. They have, I think, selected some of the most precious objects from the National Crafts Museum, bhutas they have taken there. And then as I went into the museum, the display, I saw that they have actually many rickshaws. I think the rickshaws were immediately identified with India, and therefore the display had to be put in the Indian context. And therefore they have these rickshaws, and the rickshaws had these patta jo hota hai na, that wooden that put those pattas over there, and each of those pattas on the top had these bhutas. Fair enough. Rickshaws I can associate with the pattas, and I can associate with the bhutas sitting in there, all their glory on the pattas. But what horrified me was that they had put those psychedelic lights on the wheels and all around the rickshaws. For what reason, I have no idea. But one act, because they like those bright lights, had destroyed the entire impact of the Bhuta. I gave these anecdotes because I think we need to question the very idea of we and they. There is another pronoun called us. Unfortunately, the way the world has progressed, not over the last 7,000, 8,000 years, but over the last 1 century or 2 centuries, has more regimented the society, has created a more rigid concept of we and they, where the word us is becoming increasingly difficult to comprehend. And that is where I think my take comes in. I think we need to move away from these encounters. We need to move away from this concept of the differentiation of identities. Identities, yes, identity is a fact of life. Identities began, if I may say so, rather in a very cavalier manner. The identities began the day the first human being was born, and the second and the third. And each one of them began to acquire their own identities. The societies began to form, depending on their own ambitions, depending on their own need for the resources. Somebody wanted to have 3 women, some women wanted to have 4 men, and they all began to compete. Therefore, developing those group identities had to happen. It was natural. The problem began when those identities became the norm for confrontation or competition. The competition brought in on the confrontation. And there, I don't think you see it in a more articulate manner than between India and the West, if I may say so. I don't think it's a question of understanding or lack of understanding. Let me give you 2 examples or 2 different scenarios altogether. You have Southeast Asia, and Aruna, incidentally, I think the things have gone beyond batik, and they're going to palm oil, machinery, equipment, telecommunication. Batik is a good thing, but things are very different really. I know. So India and Southeast Asia. Now, Southeast Asia, when we talk of a dialogue between us and them, again the we and they, it is not based on encounters. It is based on a certain sharing of ideas. When people talk about Angkor Wat, they talk about the ideas which have come from India into Cambodia. When we talk about Yogyakarta, the temples in Bali, we talk about how much we have shared in the past. when we talk about Indochina, we talk about how India and China have come together in Indochina, Cambodia, Laos, etc. There we do not get into the issue of whether we have come into confrontation with each other, whether we have understood each other or not. Understanding is part of sharing there. There is one example, that is India and Southeast Asia. Other example is, let us say, maybe expand it to 3, Central Asia. Silk Route. Silk Route is a bright example of how the interactions between different identities, different societies, created more ideas and created more inventiveness, innovation, and led to greater creation of ideologies. Buddhism. The Silk Route was not just a route, of course it is known as a trade route, but how many scholars have traveled along that route, sharing things with each other, creating a common universe, if I may say so. Creating a common universe where the art forms, if you look at the sculptures, the murals along the grottos, along the Silk Route, the Buddhas, Bamiyan Buddhas, was a result of people traveling across the Silk Route through Afghanistan. There we do not talk of encounters. In the case of Afghanistan, in the case of Central Asia, the Silk Route, again, there's a beautiful flow of ideas across where they all merge together, they all come together and create new things. Then we come to Europe, where I think, if I may be forgiven, I won't say it as a diplomat, but I think the colonial history of India is still not too far away from their minds. And therefore, when they look at the Indian culture, the idea is not to work with each other, the idea is in a sense to know each other, yes, but not, unlike in the case of Southeast Asia, to see how we can share things, how we can work together. It is still the idea that Indians need to know how to preserve their arts. Fair enough, we need to know how to protect our arts, but that art does not have to be a kind of thing which is protected, which is preserved, which is confined in the 4 walls. It's a kind of a thing which the human beings have to share. And therefore the idea of Europe, when we talk about Europe, with exception of one country perhaps, I think France. In the case of France, my own experience has been, there has been so much greater willingness to be together than any other country that I have seen. Therefore, in the case of Europe, I think this idea of divisibility, this idea of the multiple identities creating a confrontation is more obvious. And that is where I think the issue of we and they, we need to address in a much more creative manner, where art, I think, can be used. And that art doesn't have to be just cinematography, performing art, just simply the idea of interactions between authors, writing, scholars. They can create, I think, a better dialogue between the two people. Because ultimately, at a very basic level, I think if we strip every one of those limited identities, at the basic level, they all are same. They all really want to give expression to their own ideas. They want to work there in the safety of the society. But it is when, particularly in those countries, when the identities become the mask for the people to behave, that is when we really begin to have those issues of encounters or confrontation. So I think there is a greater need there to use all possible means that we can to create the dialogue. And my favorite way of putting it really is that rather than encounters or confrontation, I think we need to move towards adjustment amongst the societies where culture does play a very, very important role. Thank you very much.
4 different presentations on we and they. So now they become we here, and you become they there. And therefore it is your chance, unless somebody wants to say something. Please sit down. Mr. Gandhi, please sit down.
I'm going back.
Please, whoever, and as I said right in the beginning, no please, no, not you, the eternal question makers I know, and I'll not allow them. Yeah? Ask a question or a clarification, or offer a very brief comment. That's all. Yes, go ahead. Now, take the mic.
To convey one small comment. Mara has been, I think, misinterpreted in Indian cinema, Indian culture, and you have not exactly seen what it was. Bhagat Singh was going to be hanged. And so the Indian see at the actors. Master,
How?
Yes,
No, no,
please, no.
No, yes.
No.
I'm condemning.
No.
I'll throw you all, sir.
What are you?
I just wanted to make a point. I have an issue with Mr. Goyal.
Yes.
He mentioned just suddenly that Buddhism was an ideology. Somehow, in all this interaction, he forgot to mention that there were any religious encounters or religious give and take, or there was religious other. Whether we have to brush these religions under the carpet.
Carpet. And I don't, if I give an impression that I'm describing Buddhist as an ideology, frankly speaking, whether it is Buddhism or Islam or Hinduism, every religion has an ideology attached to it really. But what I meant really, Buddhism was as a system of thinking, as a system of religion, and certainly not to brush, there has been a lot of give and take and a lot of interactions between Buddhism and Islam after all. So Buddhism and Hinduism, to the extent that the introduction of icons in Buddhism was an impact of Hinduism really. Buddhism didn't have icons before. So no, certainly not. I think every religion is important, and as you can see that in India, yes.
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 Dr. GOSWAMY.
Yeah.
Please. You know, the examples which you showed of the copying, actually, or being influenced by European traditions or European works of art and so on. And then these were translated or influenced the Indian text. I don't think there was any influence as such. I mean, it was. I think it was an exercise in craft, understanding of how the thing is done and so on. Because they did that, they could say, well, you can do this too, you see. But they went back to what was really native to them. Would you agree? I mean, I'm very uncertain about this, but it seems to me that how can you apply two horses to two different visions simultaneously?
I think I've been misunderstood. What I was trying to say was that they could do these things, but they decided not to do. Right? They had their own vision. Whatever really came could be the conspectual idea at that particular time. So whatever they could internalize, I mean, whatever they could really, in a certain sense, adjust to their own style, it's very minor, very, very minor. But it kept on doing their own thing. So it was, the European works had a very, very marginal impact on Mughal painting, very marginal.
But when you come down to the company school, for instance.
Yeah, but I was only taking that.
I know you were only taking that, but the thing didn't just stop there as such.
Of course not, yeah.
And it goes on, and then in the company school it develops into a whole new thing. I mean, very composite, I mean, of both things in a sense.
Of course. I'm saying this is a first encounter between European works and Indian works, or Indian painters and so on. And this is what happens.
But we got on to a particular situation today, for instance, where the interaction is far more evident and far more far-reaching in a sense.
Yeah, the world has changed completely.
It has.
It has. I was only taking a little slice, of Indian history, art historical kind of things and so on. And I was trying to established, choices is what really eventually matter. Are you able to make a choice or are you not able to make a choice?
Yeah.
And when you make a choice, then what is it that is governing, the governing consideration in your mind?
Yeah.
Is this only an entertainment? Is it only a diversion? It is something to please the patron? But I don't think they were convinced by what the Europeans
They were not.
They were.
Yes. Anybody here wants to add anything to what?
Another lecture.
Yes, please. Yes.
I just want to make two small points. One is that, as they say, art reflects society at the time. You've spoken about paintings, you've spoken about drama, and you've spoken about films. Today's younger generation is more conversant with the internet and that. So can't we use that genre to promote the various cultural activities we have in India? We should think on that because they are very much receptive. I've seen my grown-up daughter. She spends a lot of time on the internet, but she also listens to good classical Hindi music on that, and she also sees classical dances on that. So I think that is one genre which we can now exploit for the new generation. Secondly, one small point that we talk of Europe's influence and we talk of Southeast Asia. I think China is one country which we need to interact more culturally with. Let's not keep on dwelling upon 62 and what's happening on the borders today. We need to understand it more as a country, as a culture, because it's going to be the second most powerful country in the world, and it's quite near to us. They have Buddhism, and also South America and some African.
Yes, yes.
Like Dr. B. Goswami was talking about the Indian miniature painting, like the Mughal period. I think like this influence coming from West is much older than that. I think Buddhist iconography, a lot of Greek influence. And we always have the culture, like in genetics, like India, like as you mentioned about like Indian culture being 5 million years old or something, that is not right. India, human arrived about 80,000 years back, 80 to 70,000 years back. Humans arrived in India. And like genetic mixing happening all the time. When there were no isolation was there, but at the same time in culture, this mixing is a good idea. And we have been getting elements from Europe, other culture, from China, Japan. Like Ajanta painting, we can't see in isolation as something uniquely Indian. You can clearly see the elements coming from Oriental art. So culture always being, like say, mastered. I'll use that. And it is a good idea to be mastered in art. Incorporating culture from all over the world and making our own. I think this is the spirit of art.
Yes, yes.
Respond very briefly to the points we have made in the process. I think not many people may agree with me, but my favorite way of saying this is that every classical art that we see now at one time was contemporary or folk or tribal. And they have become classical over a period of time after grammar was added, things have changed. Therefore, I don't think we should get into the debate over classical, traditional, contemporary, etc. But what we do need to so what we do need to do is give space for innovation and experimentation by youth in the Goswami Sahib is sitting there, Krishna Khanna. If they had not innovated on what they learned, we would be still in the basically the company school time or the miniature times. So I think innovation, and the innovation necessarily basically means youth. It doesn't mean, I mean, it may continue with as we grow older, but innovation is necessary, and youth certainly plays a very major role. And in fact, I will not call it internet, but the electronic or the electronic art is becoming increasingly popular, where the sounds are created, the visuals are created electronically, and they have their own merit in, you will see plenty of that in the Daily Art Summit, if you go there. Second thing, China. China is important. China is a neighboring country. China cannot be classified into just Asia or Southeast Asia. But I think in the case of China, the interactions are far more complex. In the other parts of Asia, India and China have come together or interacted with each other in creating an influence, be it Indochina or Southeast Asia or Central Asia. But India and China, on their own, they have interacted with each other much more strongly in the past. Dunhuang Grotto is an example of the impact of Buddhism. Silk Route basically was a route for trading between India and China. They had to use a Central Asian because those passes were negotiable. So there has been a lot of influence and interaction between India and China. The contemporary history adds a few more complications, and I think they necessarily require that we should keep on concentrating on the cultural relations, which we are doing, as you know from the festivals, but at the same time not ignore the political realities. Thank you.
It's my experiences. I've been listening very patiently to the panel. Pleasure listening to you. But my points, I come from the field of theatre. And my experience, I come from a very different generation. And my experience, I work mainly in Germany. I work a lot in Europe. I lived there, studied there, and I've been studied National School Drama. What I need to know is, I want to share something. Because I hear a lot about VASUDEV, which is fine here and outside as well. It's a couple of things I want to share is that the level of I teach, I collaborate, I work there and I work here as well. The one thing which I see, which makes me happy, is when you take things from India or when you're trying to, I teach even those things which I learned there, and a brown man coming and teaching them, it's quite strange for them. So what my experiences have been is that the openness is something which is very much required. When you have to talk about cultures, when you have to talk about art, whether it's in India or it's in West or East or wherever, that openness, because there's one thing which I faced a lot of difficulties when I came back to India after 5-6 years studying and working in Europe, was that it was like a line which I used to often hear was, so this was something which I said, I've not come here to teach anything, it's just like sharing. And the world is shrinking, as you all have been saying. Something I want to say that the generation, because I come from different, the voice of the generation which is different generation, is that the people who are, because sorry is here, everybody is here, the people at the helm of affairs have to also understand that they have to open doors for young generations too. It's apart from internet. That when we go to our elders, our seniors, great artists, listening to you, and then you also have to trust us and believe in that dialogue has to happen on generational level. VASUDEV is not only in West and East. VASUDEV are also in the generational VASUDEV is happening now in India. This is my experience. And difficulty as well in trying new art, innovations, experimentation. I do a lot of experimentation stuff. So we have to have that openness as well. As you said that it takes time to understand cinema, I agree. I don't like certain cinema, but I really patiently listen. Cinema, art, anything, painting for that matter, any art. So if I patiently study and look at something and then I try to understand. So that comes from openness and understanding. So I think that should be also a kind of a thing which should be propagated and helped in, especially younger generations.
Good moment to conclude. I'm sorry for having lost my temper. Because these gentlemen are known to be disruptors in some ways or the other. They're quite well known, so they're quite predictable. And I have known them for 20 years, so I know what they are up to. But anyway, my apologies. Thank you very much, all of you. I forgot to give you flowers because there was a bit of a confusion in the beginning. Keep on forgetting, so I'll give you at the end. But the next installment, Art Matters, will be on 22nd August. Survival of languages. We're going to talk about survival of languages. We'll have Professor Anvita Abbi, Professor G.N. Devi, Mrinal Pandey, and Namita Gokhale talking about survival of languages. All of you are most welcome to join in. Thank you.